Good morning, everybody, and so good to see all of us here today. We shall be running a panel discussion on how to strengthen institutions for the common good. The majority of Kenyans depend on public institutions to provide essential services and public goods. And so we are talking about things like health and education and electricity and water and even security. However, many of the public institutions that are charged to deliver these services to us as wananchi continue to struggle to deliver proper and adequate services. And as a result, a lot of us, and basically I'm referring to us as the middle class and some of us as the elite, have boycotted these institutions. And so we have found personal solutions to public problems. And so we've taken our children out of public schools. We now take them to academies. We have private insurance, so we don't have to go to public hospitals. We can hire watchmen, so we don't have to deal with public insecurity. We can drive cars, so we don't have to bother about the public transport system. And so a lot of us have run away from the public systems. However, we also have instances where we have plundered public institutions. And so we've seen the corporate sector or private entities that deliberately run down public institutions. So we all know the stories about Uchumi. Without speaking ill of the dead, questions were raised over Chris Kirubi's role in Uchumi going down. We have seen what has happened to Kenya Airways, for example, that's a public institution, and again being plundered by members of the middle class and the elite. And there are so many other stories in that area. And so what we want to talk about today is what is our role. Essentially, most of us here are educated. We have a university or technical education. And a lot of us have done what I've said. We have run away from the public system into the private. What is our role in safeguarding these public institutions? Why are they important to start with? What is wrong with our behavior of running away and leaving them? And what do we need to do to make sure that they are functioning? So I would like to introduce our two panelists. Our first panelist is Professor Daniel Mugendi, Vice Chancellor of University of Embu. He is a born-again, Bible-believing and practicing Christian, a church elder at PCA Kahawa Sukari, and a renowned scholar, researcher, consultant, and higher education administrator. He has made significant contributions in the area of agro-ecosystems research and management, as well as the development of university education in Kenya. He is currently the Vice Chancellor of the University of Embu, and he also holds a number of positions. Among them, he's the Chairman, Board of Management, Kirege Secondary School in Chuka. He's a board member of Bible Translation and Literacy, and is also a member of the Focus Kenya Advisory Committee, alongside other positions that he holds. Welcome, Professor Mugendi. Our second panelist is Sarah Wepukulu. She's the Regional Manager, Western Region, with Kenya Power and Lighting Company. I think we all know the jokes about Kenya Power and Lighting. Some have called them paraffins and lanterns. And so she's worked in the public sector, and she will share a bit with us about the challenges, but also the opportunities to influence in such a space. She's an electrical engineer by profession and has a long career spanning over 30 years in both the private and the public sector. In addition to her current role at KPLC, she has previously also worked at KCC, Kenya Cooperative Creameries. She's a trustee at Sirikwa Pentecostal Fellowship in Eldoret, as well as the deputy chair of the Focus National Governing Council. She's passionate about mentorship of the next generation, that is mentoring young people engaged in politics and governance. And she's also passionate about authentic Christian living in the marketplace. She is married to Daniel Wepukulu and is a proud mother of 2. So thank you very much, my panelists. I can see your videos are on. I will encourage you when it's your turn to speak, to unmute and speak, and then mute when you're not speaking. And we'll start off with our first question. So starting off with Professor Mugendi, briefly tell us about, for the rest of us, if we could mute, thank you very much. Professor Mugendi, briefly tell us about your journey as a Christian professional in the public service, and so the public places where you have worked. What has been your inspiration to work in the public sector, and why have you Professor Mugendi? Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I didn't get quite all that the question that you've asked, but I thought I got most of it. I want to say that I've worked in the public sector now for over 30 years, spanning way back from 1986 when I finished my first degree and started working with the Kenya Forestry Research Institute. That was June 1986. And July 1986 is when I started my career. And that time I was posted to Machakos, where I worked at Katumani Research Station in an agroforestry project. My first degree was in forestry. So I joined the Kenya Forestry Research Institute and started working as a forester. After that, I worked with Kenya Forestry Research Institute, where I rose from an assistant research officer to senior research officer. And I worked with that institution for about 12 years, up to 1998. And then 1999, I joined Kenyatta University as a senior lecturer, where then I worked for another 13 years. And at Kenyatta University, I rose through the ranks to associate professor. And I also became a chair of a department, the dean of a school, and finally the deputy vice chancellor in charge of planning, finance, planning, and development. After Kenyatta University, I joined the Embu University College, where I was a founding principal in 2012. I worked in this college and was able to convert it to a full-fledged university, and we got our charter in 2016, October 2016. And thereafter, I was appointed the pioneering vice chancellor, and it's what I'm doing up to now. So that is the short span or the long span of my life working in the public sector. And the question I think, Rachel, you've asked is why I've stuck that long, and what is it that inspires me to keep going on. I want to say that my career progression has been very interesting and very fulfilling, and I wouldn't have decided to be doing anything else than what I am doing now. And indeed, when I was a bit younger and was planning how I would like my career to progress, I think this is the path I had planned for. And of course, with Ngon's help, I've seen it come to pass. And I want to say that where I am now, I'm very fulfilled. I'm a very fulfilled public servant and making a difference in what I am doing. Thank you very much. I think that is what I got from you. I don't know that I've answered that question because I missed the last bit.
Thank you very much. You said that you work in the public sector because you find fulfillment, and that is, I think, important for people to know. Same question to Sarah. Again, briefly, your experience in the public service, why you joined and why you are still there.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I hope I'm audible enough. Like our brother, Professor Mugendi, I left university just a year after him, and I joined the Directorate of Civil Aviation working at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. At that particular time, the country was just taking on a new radar system that supports in guiding the planes. So I quickly joined in, participated in installation of a number of them and commissioning the number of them. Then I left for KCC, as you mentioned, for a short while, and then came back to the public sector at Kenya Power. At Kenya Power and Lighting Company, I have worked in various stations. I've been in Eldoret. I've been in what we call Nairobi West. That is an area that covers a portion of Nairobi. I've been in head office, and now I'm in Western Region, taking care of the 6 counties in Western Region. Maybe to come to the most the part that you've asked as to why have I stuck in the public sector? The public sector does not have too much money, Rachel, but the public sector has a lot of fulfillment. You know, in service delivery, there's something that just makes you want to go back to work when you serve one person. As you earlier mentioned, my employer, the place where I sit, is not always that you get one person to say thank you. You know, Kenyans will stay in darkness until the day you give them power, and then when it goes off, they all abuse you like the way the abuses come. But in the midst of all that, you go to one home and you find this widow who never thought that her grass-thatched house will ever have electricity. And you do the connection and buy plus the bulbs and connect this house. The joy that you see coming on the face of that person makes you want to go back the following day. The public sector has one very, very big advantage, that even when people choose to go into the private, to get private service provision, that cannot replace the public service provisions. And one thing that I tell those who interact with me, particularly those that I have the privilege to serve, is that it must be our responsibility, all of us as Kenyans, to do our best to get the public service deliver on their mandates without us accusing, abusing, and running away and leaving them. Because whether it is in the judiciary service, whether it is in the water service, whether it is in the health service, if the health services, for example, do not deliver on their mandate, we all suffer. It doesn't matter whether they are private hospitals or not. All of us as a nation will suffer. So my rally call is that for you as the people who are being served, me as a person being served, it is my responsibility to support that institution to give the best service that can be given by anyone. That is one. The other thing that really keeps me excited and wanting to say the public service is because of the number of people that come my way, the number of people that I interact with as colleagues, not now the ones we are serving, but as colleagues. That you find someone coming in looking rather lost, looking unsure of themselves, and just by watching you, a lot of them don't even care to talk to you. But just by watching you, one time you hear them giving a testimony of, oh, I was struggling with this area and I watched the way you handled this particular scenario, and I appreciate it. I was glad that I was able to improve. So that you see a young person coming into employment looking lost, if I may use that word, but 3-4 years down the line, you see a leader emerging from this person. The public service gives us the opportunity to interact with much more people, I'm sure, than what the private sector would offer. I think I would want to stop at that, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So basically, if you want a job with maximum impact to maximum number of people, the public sector is for you. Let me turn back to Professor Mugendi. Even though you've said that the job is inspiring and you have achieved what you wanted, we also know that the public sector is full of a lot of challenges. What would you say the challenges are? One, in the public sector itself, in terms of service delivery, and then two, for you as a believer who has to navigate that system.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Rachel, for that question. Yes, indeed, the public sector has a lot of challenges. First and foremost is the insufficient funding. Realizing that many of these public sector institutions, like now where I serve at the University of Embu, we depend solely on the exchequer, the government, to give us the funds that we need to operate. Actually, a big chunk percentage of our resources or finances come from the government. And therefore, we know that obviously the government will never have enough to give everyone like we would need and like we would require. So we have that first challenge of insufficient funds. The doubting task that we have is also, as these institutions, to be able to raise funds internally to be able to do what we need to do. And of course, we try that. Again, where I'm working in the public sector, I mean in the universities, we used to have what we were calling in yesteryears, that was commonly referred to as the Module 2 programs or the parallel programs, where we would have students who qualified to join the university or who under C+ and above, but could not be taken because we were lacking spaces then. But lately, like for the last 4 years, that tap has dried, because then everybody from way back 2016, everybody who gets a C+ automatically gets sponsored by the government, and therefore joins a public university or private university, but as a government-sponsored student. So then we don't have that stream out there of students who can be able to come and join and be able to support the university financially. So many of us have seen a lot of universities, especially the bigger universities, struggling. A lot of financial difficulties. I think we've been seeing this in the papers. It's only yesterday that we got a very bold statement from the Council of the University of Nairobi, where they are restructuring to be able to reduce costs. Indeed, many of the universities are suffering financially, and this is because of that insufficient funding. So I would say that is the biggest challenge, and it's not only unique to the universities. In fact, in most of the public sector, finances is always a problem, irrespective of where you are, and it's that has been a big challenge. The other one is, of course, the issues that then come with the kind of work that we do. And again, we know that in public sector, we have the huge cry of issues to do with corruption. You talk of, you think anything public and any service delivery, wherever money is coming in, then the first thing you start thinking of is whether those funds that are meant to benefit the common mwananchi, whether they will actually get there. And really, the stories are many. Look at KEMSA. Even when we are in the height of pandemic, we are talking of coronavirus, and you see there are few people who are out there to enrich themselves using COVID funds, instead of thinking of our brothers and sisters who are getting affected and infected by this disease. Look at things even where we work, things like tenders. How are they given out? How are they awarded? In fact, I liked the way our speaker, who has just spoken before us, the governor, His Excellency, the governor of Makueni, the way he said they do it in Makueni, like the tender issues, because that's now where the biggest corruption is. Either you are looking at the county governments, or you are looking at national government, or you are looking at SAGAs and MDAs like ourselves. Again, there is normally a lot of corruption in those areas. Who gets tenders, who is awarded, and therefore sometimes because of personal interest, then you find the money that would have come to help the institution really does not end up helping institutions, but ends up going into people's pockets. So really, corruption is an issue there and some big challenge. The other challenge is management itself. Like when you are talking of public sector and the main institutions, government alone has like, the Kenyan government has over 260 parastatals, or what we call state corporations. And you find some of them are run or are managed very, very poorly. So you find the management is also another big challenge, because then when you have people who are managing and are not able to make sound decisions, they are not able to manage what is given under their care very well, then we end up with a lot of wastage. We end up a lot of decisions that leading do not benefit this country, do not benefit the people we are supposed to serve, and in the long run become very expensive to the government itself. So poor management is another challenge. And then we have something that will go alongside corruption, greed. Yeah, sometimes my sister Sarah is saying we may not have in the public sector, money may not be there, our salaries may not be that high. But the Bible says godliness and contentment is great gain. So whatever we are given, we need to be contented and we need to be able to serve. But again, there are those of us who will not be satisfied with what we have, and we are greedy and we want to get more. We want to amass more wealth. We want to use those possessions to enrich ourselves. And therefore, that's why I'm saying that also borders alongside it, borders corruption. And we use our possessions to enrich ourselves and to amass resources that would have otherwise gone to benefit the people that we are supposed to be looking after. And then lastly, I would think we also have a challenge of competition, and this competition from both the private and the public sector itself. You think of the universities, again, where I am, you find even amongst ourselves, the public institutions, public universities, there's still a lot of competition amongst ourselves. There's competition amongst ourselves, the public universities, there's competition amongst ourselves, private versus public universities. So competition is there. We are also competing with other institutions that might be doing the same things we are doing. And so people who are operating in the same space, we will definitely end up competing. But when you come to asking me what the solution for that, I would say instead of competing, we need to be looking for ways of collaborating and seeing areas that we can collaborate other than compete. But as of now, that is a challenge in itself, Rachel. And I would like to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mugendi, for describing for us the context within which you work. And picking up from there, Sarah, what then does a Christian professional like yourself, who works in such a space where there is corruption, there is greed, there is lack of funding, there are so many problems, what can a Christian professional do to then work ethically, to be honorable, to shine the light of Christ in such a space? And so you're speaking to those among us who also work in the public sector. What can they do about those problems?
Thank you, Rachel. Maybe I want to begin from the point of Dr. John Stott. Dr. John Stott has done a lot of write-up books on the Christian in the contemporary space. And I believe that it is very critical for us as we get out into service, into a place of service, we equip ourselves with some of that knowledge. For example, Issues Facing Christians is one book I've read from when I was in university, and all the time I want to go back and pick one page and go through again. And one of the things that John Stott brings out very strongly is the issue of the Great Commission vis-a-vis social responsibility. Do we get interactive or do we sit back? We have public sectors where you'll find very, very vibrant fellowships. I am pro Christian fellowships. In fact, in my place of work, we are just about to get one other fellowship born. Because of something that is common in us, we are able to encourage each other. But one thing that, Rachel, we have to acknowledge is that the public sector is a reflection of government. And there are very many processes, there are very many policies, there are very many procedures that govern different things. So sometimes you could actually be looking at it from the tail end and you assume there's corruption here, when maybe there's no corruption actually. It is very possible that we throw stones before we have come to understand the processes within the organization. And just picking up again from where our brother governor left us, it is good to have those of us who can understand policies, go through the policies. And I want to give you a good example, Rachel. For example, in this country, persons living with disability are entitled to bringing in a car duty-free. Very few people who need that car, very few people who need to use that facility are aware of it. So you see, there's even just a part of advocacy, if I may use that word, or of informing the public that actually government allows you to get this. Now, if I may just follow up on that, one time as an example, I visit one of the organizations because to get that car duty free, there are so many steps. You have to go to one institution, go to another one before you are fully put on board, to get the exemption letter. So I get to one office and I find a young man taking breakfast, which is not a problem to take breakfast in the office. But you see, he was taking breakfast while I'm seated in front of him. So I just kept my cool. He finished his breakfast. I asked him, so can we talk? He says, yes. Then I asked him, where are my papers? I'm following up on my papers. And he tells me, you didn't attach a detailed picture of yourself. And I told him, oh, but you have seen me. You are a representation of your boss and you have seen me. So are you believing it or not? Or do we go to see your boss? Then he realizes, oh, he needs to take me a little bit more seriously. And I stayed at that young man's desk. We had a little bit of chat. And I was trying, why I was doing that is because I was coming from a place of, imagine a teacher from Makueni, an ECD teacher who has raised some 400,000. She believes that she can get a car to support her in her movement. Coming to Nairobi to find an officer who talks to her or him like that, that person will go back and never come back again. So what I'm trying to say here, Rachel, is that those of us who have the privilege to be hearing ourselves in this conference, those of us who have the privilege of having gone to school and having understood the different policies that we know that Kenyans are supposed to be benefiting from, need to just take a little bit of time to get the service provider, appreciate that they're not doing anybody a favor to provide that service. It's actually a favor they're having to be seated on the other side of the desk. As I watch the clip on the young persons who are getting out into their space, or even what Barasa shared with us about NHIF, there are many people who can afford to pay NHIF monthly, or somebody can support them, but they don't know. They don't know how to do it. So those of us who know just have to get into that space. And the issue of being authentic, that is maybe if I may use that word, or being true to our call as believers in the public sector, is not an issue about what we say. It is about what we do, because we are not two people. We are not two in one. A Christian is not a Christian at work and a Christian at church. We are just a Christian. So in the small issues that come our way, and when I was talking about policies, it's because there are some who may pick it from the policy level. There are others who will be at the front office desk, that as people walk to you, how do you respond to those people? We are in a society that has a lot of segmentation of people. You are a bigger consumer. This one is a smaller consumer. But you know, no customer walks to you for fun. Nobody leaves their home to come and to a service provider because they want to have a chat. They're coming because they were looking for something that they haven't received. So maybe for those of us in the public space, I can only say that we just have to be authentic. Christians, I'm sorry, but believers are stealing on the employer's time, for example. So when you have finished stealing on your employer's time, how do you then come and become authentic in that space, at that desk where you have been given? We really have to be true, as the Bible encourages us, to be true and faithful to our employer, and to be true and faithful to our colleagues, and more so to be faithful to the people that we are giving the service to. So maybe in a nutshell, I would say, just be a Christian. That is all. Just be a Christian in the space where you are seated, so that whatever drops on your desk at whatever time finds you a Christian. Then your response will just follow the path that the Lord expects us to take. Over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Turning to Professor Mugendi, Sarah has told us what is the role of the Christian who's an insider, who works in those spaces. What is the role of us, who are the users of the services, particularly the middle class and the elite who have run away from the public system? What is our role to help improve public services? So, for example, you've talked about university education. A lot of us still go through the public university system. So we take our children to private schools in primary, then we try to get them into Alliance and all those other schools which are public. And then definitely university, we want to come back to the public. So what is our role in ensuring that there's a well-functioning public education system or other public systems?
Thank you very much, Rachel, for that question. What is our role as Christians, or as the elite, or the middle class, like we like calling ourselves, in ensuring that the public service is something that we want to go to? I think there is Richard, there is that apathy that the services, most of the services that are public services have deteriorated so much that we feel like we don't belong there. I know, for example, the common one is like health services. I wonder how many of us who are logged here, I've seen the number is over 200. I wonder how many of us visit public hospitals when you are sick, that you go to a public hospital somewhere or public facility, health facility somewhere as your first stop. Maybe many of you have insurances that are able to take you to better places. But of course, you find like some of us who have the advantage of have been privileged even to travel out of this country. We've maybe gone to stand outside. You find in some of the countries, like public health care is the best. So anytime like you fall sick, the first place you want to go to is a public hospital, not a private hospital. Just like the way we would want our children to go to Alliance, Kenya, which are public schools and not the private ones. So I think we have a role to play, but before I come to that, then why is this apathy and why have we found ourselves in that space? Mm-hmm. I think Rachel, this is a discussion that we need to keep having, but I think it has to do a lot with the way we formulate our policies in this country and the way we follow through. And I think it is because the issues of like I talked earlier on, corruption, greed, and the things like those. Because again, you don't want to go to that hospital whereby sometimes you are even to go with your own paper where the doctor will have to do the prescription. And when the doctor finishes the prescription, then you are told to go and buy medicine. So I don't think many of us will have that time. You want to go where you are able to be attended once and you resolve all your problems. So I think it's the policies, the way we formulate our policies, and we might want to finger point the government, or the government has not done this, the government has not done that, but we also have a role to play. Because it's not always the government, we need to be asking ourselves, we are also part of the government, so what have we done? So I would think if we have a system that works, then you will find that many of us would want those services that are offered by the government itself. Of course, I've seen a good example is like the public schools, the alliances, the Kenya Eyes, and those others. The manuals, I think that's a good example that there is something that is public that can work. And even these other services that don't seem to be working, we need to keep pressurizing our government to ensure that those services are provided and they work. Of course, we'll then need to reduce the level of corruption, the level of greed, so that then the resources that are supposed to go and fund those services are there. Because if you're able to walk to Kenyatta National Hospital or any other hospital and you get all the services, all the medicines that you need, then you wouldn't see the need to go to Nairobi Hospital or any other place. Because after all, we are very competent doctors and the nurses in those places. So I think as it's work with the government, and we are the people in government, most of us now, and we need to be ensuring that we are changing some of these policies, and then we make sure that those places are also funded properly. And it's not that they are not being funded. I see the current government trying very hard, but again, the pockets that I want to say that our woes are too many, so that when these resources come, instead of getting to where they're supposed to get them, their perforations or their holes along the way, and they keep dripping and disappearing before they get to where they are supposed to get. So again, if we're able to reduce that, I think that will help. And that's why I think, going back to my sister Salah's comments, we are not Christians on Sundays only. Many of these institutions are manned by people who call themselves Christians. And because again, when you look at our country, we brag that we are 70, 80, 90% Christians or Christianity, but we don't see that being translated in our workplace. When we are appointed to run these facilities, we don't see that, and we don't see that coming through. So that then we continue making a difference where we are. So I think the challenge here is that we, as the people then who are manning some of these facilities and are helping in what the government has placed in our hands, we need to lead from the front, and we need to be examples to make these things work. And of course, then as citizens, we also continue then urging the government to continue providing resources to be able to make these facilities first class, so that everybody then would want to use them. And I think, Rachel, if we do that, we will be able to get these facilities that we are running away from. We will be able to get people wanting to go there. It's just a question of a change of mindset. And if we're able to prove that if I go, like now where I stay in Embu, if I go to Embu Level 5 Hospital, I'll be able to get the same services like I would get in another private hospital there. Then I would always prefer to go to the Embu Level 5 Hospital, which is a public institution. But you see now, if I go there, even seeing a doctor, is a problem because then most of the doctors there are running their own clinics. So they only make a technical appearance in the hospital, they come 1 hour and then disappear. So again, you find we have a problem. So we need to be disciplined in the way we do our things and know that when we are given those responsibilities, we are serving Kenyans and we are serving ourselves so that we then are called upon to improve where we are. We shouldn't be thinking that this is government and therefore nobody is responsible. You know, when I was in school, there is something we used to call the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of the commons is where like we have like these public lands or communal grazing areas whereby then everybody wants to take their animals to graze, but nobody wants to take care of in ensuring that those areas are restored, they are conserved, because everybody wants to get the maximum out of it, but nobody wants to go back and care for them. So we need to feel that where we are, it is our responsibility. We take care, and it's not that there is another person there that we point fingers, serikali or government. It is ourselves. And then if we do that, and with the resources, no matter how little that are coming through, we will be able to improve our lot, and we will be able to improve these facilities so that then they become likable. Thank you.
Turning back to Sarah, I want to pick one question from the chat. As users of public services, so Professor Mugendi said that many of us run away because the services are poor, and so where we have an alternative, we go. But for example, something like power, you're a monopoly. So whether we like Kenya Power or not, we as the users, what can we do to improve service delivery? I mean, other than complaining, what are practical steps we could take to improve the service delivery? And then you as a deliverer of services, what are things that can be done to improve the customer experience? Because most of us, our hesitance with engaging with these institutions is the kind of people that meet us. So you already talked about that person who you came in and found he was drinking tea. So you know all the things you people do when we come to your offices that irritate us. You're on your phone, some people are playing solitaire, you're telling us come tomorrow. So what can you do to improve service delivery? And what can we do to get better services?
Thank you, Rachel, and for the question. Maybe I would just want to mention that all of us as Kenyans, it doesn't have to be that this is the only supplier of the product that I'm going for. If I may just get back to where Professor was talking about the hospital, of what value would it be for us, for me to be able to book myself, that I can easily book myself to a private hospital when the majority of Kenyans do not have health facility? You know, if we can have a mind shift, if we can have a change in mind, we as a nation, Rachel, I think we just all, as a society, we have a societal problem that Kenyans are not service, if I may use a servant oriented. Kenyans are very democratic in their thinking, and Kenyans believe too much in my rights at the expense of some bit of humility in the way we handle other people. So it is not a Kenya Power issue, and I would not want to, I'm not here representing KPLC today. I am here talking about service provision in the country. So I would not want to zero in on that. But the whole issue of when you come and find me taking tea, how do you respond? How do you respond to me as a person who knows what your right is? If I may use a common one, is the police service. How many of us speak very bad words about policemen in the hearing of our children? I personally have purpose, and I do this every time a police officer stops me. I address them as, "Good morning, sir. Sir, how are you doing?" Because it feels nice. You saw the other day the clip that was making rounds. When a police officer's phone is snatched on the road by a motorist, the first question that comes to mind is, Why was that officer on the phone? How many of us feel uncomfortable when you find a police officer standing by the road and is actually on the phone? You know, they are manning security. So when they're on the phone, what happens? Security issues are risk issues that happen at with a very short notice. So if they're already being absorbed on a mobile phone, in fact, at one time I thought if I was to become a police commissioner, I would have all the policemen not going to work with phones. If there's anything they should use walkie-talkies, because that is the mode of communication that their work requires. Now, leave the police officer aside. When this young person or whoever was on the motorbike snatches the police officer's phone, what is the reaction of Kenyans? We are happy. The police officer deserves it. Really? How did we come to a point where we feel like the police officer is an enemy to the people? The police officer actually spends sleepless nights to guard us. It is true there are a few rock ones, but as a society, are we also pushing police officers, for example, to become worse? So that when a police officer is being beaten, we are happy as a nation. Or we are bringing up children who believe that police officers should be abused. Or maybe if I may bring it a little bit more home, how many of us in this sitting, in our place of work, have a toilet that is labeled for the boss? That where the cleaner, the sweeper, goes for toilet is not critical for you. You will get very upset if you find your toilet open because other people are going to use it. Then where is the Christian value? Because we are saying, why can't you have all the toilets clean? So that anybody, as you at Professor Mgendi's college, is it possible that the students' toilets cannot flush and the lecturers' toilets must flush? What if we worked where we are to create a level ground? So for me, I would just want to encourage us that we have a very big role in molding the tomorrow. But when we get agitated, like I told you, I sat and waited for that day. And because I'm also in the public sector, when he finished, now I started to talking to him, actually letting him know that as the person who sat next to him, I am his supervisor, as it were, in that particular space. And because in Nairobi, people go to work very early, taking tea in the office is not a problem. But how do you handle that situation with me seated there? So when we leave office and we go and block, write all the nasty things that we want to write, but you have left the person who annoyed you the same. If you change one at a time, just help them to appreciate, because that guy, when he leaves that desk, he will be going to a petrol station to fuel. He also requires someone to serve them. So I am convinced that all of us appreciate good service. So when we label people and we shout and we make noise and fail to get one-on-one with the person you have been privileged to come and serve you, so that you leave one better Kenyan or service provider, you leave them the same, we now look for a way in which we can have them punished. That maybe is not going to give us faster results than when we change around and even help these people appreciate the need for us as a society to have a good service provision.
As we drew to the end of our panel, I just wanted to come back to Professor Mugendi. So you talked about the competition that comes from the private sector. How can the private sector help to improve the public sector, where this could really be applicable? So we have all these private universities coming up. How can they help the public sector? And then the final question to Sarah will be, how do we raise the next generation of public servants who will be in charge of
Okay. I'm not sure that Rachel has finished. It looks like, again, we are having a problem of connectivity. Rachel, do I progress? Looks like
Professor, it looks like Rachel dropped off, so you could proceed and answer part of the questions as she joins.
yes, it looks like we have lost our moderator. This will be very sad. We have a plane without a pilot. Yes, I think the question Rachel has asked is a very important one. Instead of competition, how do we improve, especially in the area of service and delivery? And I would say what we need to do is to look for areas where we can collaborate and cooperate. And if need be, sign even MOUs, memorandum of understanding or agreement, where we can be able to work and partner together. That way we will reduce the competition. For example, if it is University X that is very good in one area, and we at University of Embu, we are also good in another area, we can collaborate. There's nothing whatsoever that prevents us from collaborating and cooperating in those areas. And that way then, instead of trying to duplicate everything all over, then we will be able to be sharing, because resources will never be enough. I know, for example, our current CS, Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Education, all of you know him, Professor George Magoha. Anytime he talks to us, he castigates and criticizes universities that are trying to offer everything. He says, for example, if it's education, you find almost every university wants to offer education. Of course, what I say silently is some of these things we do for survival. Because again, you are an institution and you need to survive. The funding that we get from the government is based on the number of students you have. And also, you also want programs that are marketable, because we also want students choosing your own your university. So then you are responding to a specific need. But I think the way it's wired is that universities should just specialize. If it's the University of Embu, what can we specialize in, and we become good at that? If it's the University of Nairobi, what can they specialize in? The problem is Nairobi is the mother of us all. So they have been there even before the others came. So I don't know what they will be able to specialize in, because they were jack of all trades. But the issue is what our CS has been trying to hammer to us is that instead of trying to compete, can you collaborate? And can you find out what your niche is, what is it you can do very well, so that then you channel your resources into doing that. Of course, that would be possible then, as I've seen, if the funding from the government is very well assured, and that if at the University of Embu we only want to concentrate in the area of agriculture, even now when we don't have, we have minimal students in the area of agriculture, we will soon be supported to be able to do that. So I think the issue is that the talking now does not reflect where the funding is, because then at the end of the day is, am I able to pay my employees their salaries? As a university, are we able to meet our mandates? Are we able to do what we are supposed to be doing as an institution? So then in that case, you have to think out of the box and try to see how to survive. But I think if that was not there, then there are many other things that we could be able to do. But I think to minimize the competition in this space, especially between ourselves and even the private institutions, I think the best thing is to collaborate. Let's have memoranda of understanding, so that then we are able to collaborate and cooperate in areas, so that whoever is strong in one area we should channel the energies and the resources in that area so that we are able to support, and vice versa. So that's what I would want to say. Let's minimize the competitions. As you know, those of us who are in the university sector, we know that competition is stiff. Not only, as I said again, not only amongst the public universities, but it's also amongst public universities and also between public universities and private universities. Like now, the biggest issue has been this funding of government taking of students to private universities when the capacities in the public universities has not been filled up. Again, there has been a lot of debate on that, and we need to see how, again, we continue collaborating with the private universities, because they also need these students. And sometimes I also like wearing their shoes, because then if all the students that get C+ become government sponsored students, and yet these universities have come up, they have invested. Some of them have even taken loans to put up those structures, and we don't then give them students. Then how do we expect them to survive? So again, I think there is some discussions and some balance that needs to be done here, so that again we look at everything in a very holistic manner. And as I'm saying, for me, the way out is collaboration and not really competing. Because at the end of the day, we want to serve the Kenyans, we want to serve our students, and these students are also Kenyans. And if we do that, then we will help ourselves in a very big way. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So, Sarah, just quickly, so what do we need to do to raise the next generation of good Christian public servants?
Thank you. Picking up from where Professor has left, I would also want to add that collaboration with the workspace, with the corporates that are receiving your students, Professor. Some years back, I had a very interesting experience where a dean of students for one of the colleges, who is also on this forum today, actually wrote to us and asked us, you receive our students for attachment. We just want to come and say thank you and have a chat with you. The people that we are sending out from the university, let the university also establish what is going on with this when they work to the workplace. What is it that we need to add in their professional, in their specific profession? What more do they require to pick up the skills of starting work, of joining workspace? But leaving that space, I would that for us, we have the privilege of dealing with students at the university level. Let's encourage students, let's encourage people to go to the public sector. The public sector in Kenya has become a place we want to throw stones at. Yet the public sector indicate that actually Kenyans are willing to change. For example, the issue of education. When C.S. Matiang'i came in and he tried to sanitize education, we actually agreed and began following. When Huduma Center came up, I did visit one of the Huduma Centers because one of my staff, we had a desk at Huduma Center. And I walked into the center and I found the center manager walking around. So I asked the Askari, where is the boss for this place? And he shows me some young person walking among people, asking, why have you taken long to be served? And I thought Huduma Center was one of the best, one of the best outlets we had in the public sector. But the challenge we have as a nation is sustaining the change. So maybe us as believers, we have the opportunity to support in sustaining the change. Reading, engaging those who are making policy, understanding how are the people, receiving it? Where do we need to enhance? And then finally, within our families, just being positive about service provision. being positive about what we do around us. For example, the whole issue from a younger age of the environment. If we are a family that makes the environment dirty without feeling guilty, then later on we want to push that to be a public office challenge. But you see, we have already developed youngsters who do not care about a clean environment. Issues of discrimination, segmentation of people. This one deserves this, the other one doesn't deserve. If as believers we just began from that point, then as we send people into the public office, they know that everybody coming to that office deserves equal opportunity to be served. And then maybe the last one is the desire for quick gain, quick wealth, you know. I think one of the things that is making the public office look like that is not the place I want to go, is because all our young people want to become rich yesterday. They do not want to walk the path of wealth development. They do not want to have appreciation of why wealth, you know, why do you want to become wealthy? We are running other people's scripts actually. Because so-and-so is driving a Range Rover, I also want a Range Rover. Because so-and-so is having a big house, I also want a big house. So if we maybe made this to be more, this kind of discussion to come at our table, you know, engagement table with whoever we find that we can pass some information to a little bit more, it will, one, help us change our attitude to public service. And then the other thing is that it will help us appreciate that it is my role and my responsibility as a consumer of the service to have to enhance or improve provision of that service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mugendi and Sarah. As you saw, my internet disappeared, so that just says that the private sector also occasionally has failures in service delivery. And if I'll just conclude what we have learned today, so I think first it's a call from them that more of us need to get into public service with a view to delivering services. And I think that echoes what Professor Kibwana was saying, that we need to restore servant leadership, to go in there to serve people, not for personal benefit. And then two, as those who work in those spaces, we just need to be Christians. Let us be the best deliverer of services. And then for those of us who are outside, can we be good service users? And so I saw some posts in the chat around paying bills on time. Perhaps the challenge here is those of us who got help, have we paid back our loan so that it helps another student to be able to get their loan? Sarah's comments around how do you talk to public servants? Are you rude to policemen? Are you rude to the person who's supposed to be giving you a service? Do you walk in saying this is my right, shouting to them and so on? So how do we treat them? And then lastly, because some of their issues are structural, how then do we engage at the structural level? And so going back to the discussion around engaging systems and structures. So if there's a funding problem, what are we going to do about their funding? If there's corruption, what are we going to do about that? So thank you very much, Professor Mugendi and Sarah, and I hand over back to Focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for a job well done. For Professor Mugendi and Engineer Sarah, we are really grateful for your insights. Maybe we can, Rachel, we can take 2 or 3 questions.
Could I break with protocol and ask if anyone has a question? I would like to give you a chance to ask it in person as opposed to the chat. And you can do that by raising your hand, and then I will know you've got a question. Anybody? Anyone with a question?
Okay, I have one.
Go ahead.
I'm Derek Kabasa, a recent graduate of public health from JKUAT, and I do have a question for both of them. What was the role of mentorship, maybe as you grew in your the public sector? So when you finished school, did you have mentors along the way to guide you through to where you are right now? And that's my question. Thank you.
Before you answer that question, Henry Odede also has his hand up. Henry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rachel. I want to appreciate that session and this conference. I want to thank Engineer Sarah for sounding me out. We worked with her for some while. I just want to remark that those of us who are here and we are believers, whether in public service as servants or in private sector, really we have a great call, as we have observed, really to be believers, because the Lord wants to bring change through those who believe. So we have a great responsibility to bring God's blessings to the nation. So I just wanted to observe that, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will allow both Professor Mugendi and Sarah to answer those questions, starting with Professor Mugendi and then Sarah.
Thank you very much, Rachel. The question was on mentorship role as we climbed up the ladder in public service. Did we have figures that acted as our mentors and that we were able to copy from? I would say yes. We and the people, like for me, and the people who really acted as the role models for me, and the people that I copied from. Some majority of them Christians, and therefore I would then learn good traits, especially on being honest, virtues like honesty, truthfulness, integrity, and things like those. Others also who are not Christians, but again, good leaders that I was also able to follow, to learn from, handwork, being focused, and the things like those. For example, if I can only mention one, my former Vice Chancellor at Kenyatta University, Professor Olive Mugenda, taught me a lot, especially on the issues of handwork, being focused, and deciding when you want to do something. Don't listen to naysayers, because then you may never be able to achieve anything. So handwork, at least that one I learned from her, and being very, very focused. And indeed, and many others that really have come along the way to help me as I climbed. Even now, I still have mentors that I look up to. And I know very well that I also have very many people that I'm mentoring. So even as I do this, actually my prayer every morning when I wake up is that I pray and I tell God, for this day, God help me to be a good role model. Because I know somebody somewhere is looking at how I do things, how I make decisions, and the things like those. So it's something that I'm very conscious of, that every day I'm mentoring somebody. There are those that have come and they have told me, yes, Professor, you are my role model, you are my mentor, and I'm following you, and I'm trying to, the famous saying, nafuata nyayo zako, I'm trying to follow your footsteps. So I'm conscious of that, and therefore that doesn't mean that I'm very, very careful in doing everything that I do every day, so that I don't mislead those people who are following me. But as much as possible, I tell God to help me to be a role model for somebody every day. And I know there are many people who are doing that. And yes, I want to say I am the people that I learned from, and I'm still learning from. Thank you.
Sarah, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Rachel. Yeah, on the role of mentorship, I would want to say that is very critical. Some people mentor us without us telling them. We're just watching their lives. For example, one of the advisory committee members, Engineer Kamau, was a big role model for me. When I was in the university, Engineer and his wife were already engineers who are in the workspace. And I liked to just follow, wanting to know what is he doing, where is he, what is it for to be an engineer and a Christian. I also had a lady engineer in my office who is not a believer, but I liked her level of boldness. The public office has one good thing, that actually where you are, you have a lot of authority to make a difference. You only need to have good justification, good explanation, know how to seek for funding. You can leave things the way you found them, or you can actually have a great impact in changing the environment. And this particular lady, in an area she worked, she left the place with very good office space for employees and all those facilities. And I used to, as a young person in employment, I liked watching her and just feeling like, yeah, this is what I want. And maybe the last one is that, as Professor says, we never stop having role models. And I'm one person who believes that it's good to be firm and true to what you are called to do. We are in a season where, changing goalposts is the order of the day. I don't believe in shifting goalposts unless it is really, really mandatory and is critical. So that if we are saying this is the direction we want to go, I love those kind of leaders, even in government, who say this is the direction we are going to go and we go that direction. So I still have role models up to today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mugendi and Sarah. I think we have seen that there are still some good public servants, and some of us will feel encouraged to join the public service and do what we can from outside to improve public service delivery in this country. Thank you so much for your time today morning, for your service to Focus and in other places. And I hand over to Diana.